And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Shawn Kendall, Program Manager for Artificial Intelligence.
Oh, how's everybody doing? All right. Is this your last session for the day? I think so. Yeah. Or something more interesting later. All right. We've got a really excellent panel, and I'm going to get right in so we can just start talking as much as possible. I'm going to introduce them by saying what they're up to, and then calling them in here. I'm going to have to use my notes for that because there's just so much going on here. So, all right. So we got the founder and lead visual effects artist at Skulley FX, Culley Bunker. All right. How's it going? Good to see you.
Good.
You'll have to turn your mic on and open your mic. It's not audio.
Okay. Procedures.
Yes.
Check.
All right. We've got entrepreneur, recording, and mix engineer and producer, Ashish Manchanda. We've got brand strategist and keynote speaker, Pallen. Maybe Pallen? And finally, Vice President of Technology at Proforma, Plante. How you guys doing?
Good.
All right. Yeah, give your mic a try just in case.
Check.
Okay, so I got a little opening piece, and then I'm going to throw a question out to you guys, and we'll see what we can do with this. Okay, so as college students going in the workforce, you're stepping into a world where artificial intelligence is no longer a futuristic concept. In fact, depending on how close you are to graduation, it probably happened while you were here at Full Sail. If you're close to graduation, or if you just started, you might have already been using it, which is kind of amazing. We have this happening with students coming all the time. My kids are using it, and they're in high school, so it's everywhere. But what we want to find out here is how can we get through the hype and find out what's really useful for you now and in the near future, so you're prepared for the changes that are going to come as well. All right, so, and you guys can kind of, since there's no prepping, I haven't given them any indication of what these questions are. You know, you'll have to jump in if you think of it, because sometimes you might need a little bit more, I know. Some of these questions get a little tricky. But here's one right off the bat, should be easy. What AI tools, like real-world examples that you're using right now currently in your prospective fields? And these fields are pretty different. This is unlike a lot of the talks where it's like kind of localized to a couple degrees. So like really something that's super specific to what you guys are working on.
Go down the line? Or?
Okay, sure.
Hey,
yeah.
Whoa. I just volunteered. All
yeah,
right.
okay.
I'm in visual effects, and we use AI in a few different areas. Number one is pipeline. We're using Claude currently to parse our files when they're input, and then it figures out what kind of file it is, and then it puts it into a database, and then puts it into our folders and gets it organized for use. Also, my pipeline engineer is using Claude, ChatGPT, and a few others I can't even think of right now to help with his coding. He's gone from, he says he can code in a day what he used to code in a week or two. It's quite insane.
Explain pipeline a little bit.
Pipeline is the flow of data that comes from a client all the way for delivery. And in the middle of that pipeline is how it's used. Now, the more data you have, the more you can manipulate that into what you need to do. Like, it used to be a very manual process of bringing in files, putting them in folders, uploading them to ShotGrid, which is a shot tracking software, tracks hours, tracks schedules, tracks shots, tracks tasks. And all these processes become automated now because the AI can see, oh, this is this type of file, that's usually this, so I'm going to put it in this folder and I'm going to rename it to this. And then there's color files, and it says this is a color file, and it processes color files, so when we open Nuke, that color file is already predestined to give you the right color. And then ref files are usually movies, MOVs, with hopefully a REF in it, and it goes, that's a ref file, so I'm going to put this in there so they can look at this file later as the reference to the shot. And then in the middle, you can create tools that has all that data to do different things. We're just starting on the ingester, so the ingester is almost done to do exactly what I told you. The next step is deliverables. So Shotgun will have a task, and you say, ready for client, and at the end of the day, you hit a script. It'll collect all those files, rename them to the client names, put them in a folder, and make a CV for delivery that you can upload to the client.
Yeah, so that some of that sounds like it might have been traditional automation, but then that definitely sounds like a job was replaced. I'm feeling like that sure sounded like somebody's job before.
Yes and no. The guy that's creating the pipeline, was kind of his job. It's just a lot simpler and a lot faster. But yes, sorry, the back end of that right now isn't really AI, but the front end is, where it understands what you're giving it and knows what to do with it. That process is definitely a coordinator's job, and the coordinator's job just get a lot easier or could be eliminated. You're right.
Right. I was going to say, it made a job no one wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's just data management.
But that sounds amazing, because what you're describing is like, it sounds really unstructured. So now this has got to all be double checked, I'm sure.
Of course. It's right now we're just getting into this, so it's no man's land. We're not sure how it's going to act, but every time we give it a new file, it learns. Like, hey, what do you want to do with this?
Wow.
Like, hey, I don't know. This is a DPX, but it has this naming convention. What do you want to do? And after you tell it, it will know the next time. So it gets smarter and smarter as it goes.
Wow, that's kind of neat. So you guys' interaction in it is training it for for what you're working on.
Yes. The second area that we used AI was for a recent show called Lady in the Lake. We de-aged Natalie Portman about 30 years to make her look like she was the professional from her current age of we don't know. I don't know. I think she's like 46, 47. So the process was using something like Stable Diffusion to take a still from the first shot, and it would de-age to a look, and we tried to make that consistent. The second thing was doing a face swap with a face tracking and face swap software, and that would give you the de-age part from that still and would track it on. The difficulty with today's technology, it is just a tool. It ain't a make a good button yet. Could come. But we then use that as an outline, because in professional video or professional film, your color space is not 8-bit and your size is not 1K by 1K. And this is what an AI produces right now.
Right.
So we had to use that, upscale it, and then find out where the colors are being clipped, because your lows and your highs are clipped at 8-bit when we're using 16-bit float. So there's a lot of technical words there. In other words, we used it as a very good template, and then we did a lot of traditional things to finish it off.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So in both of those cases, you're doing things you could have done otherwise, probably. Maybe the face one, maybe not so much.
It gave us a very good template.
Yeah.
Then we matched it with traditional tools. I would say,
but then you had
a quarter of the AI that we actually did use in each shot.
Yeah. So, but then the recipient has to be an expert to determine the quality of the output. Still, right?
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah. I imagine we're going to come back to this theme over and over again. But wow, that's really cool. All right, who wants to go next?
Sure. From our side, we are launching the new project and platform, and we are using AI, generative AI, to come up with like original work sketches for like music, and also video ideation. But we're using it for more ideation and, let's say, inspiration to get quick options. So that's been happening a lot, because with the platform that we are creating, there's going to be like tons of new songs and music and assets going to be created. So it's turned out to be a very valuable tool to quickly come up with options. And then we can select the one which we really like and then actually start building on them.
So you're using like full-on generative AI here.
Yes.
Yeah, but as part of like a storyboarding process.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's almost one of the first ones that adopted to the images even before ChatGPT became ubiquitous, because it's such a great thing. And I've definitely used plenty of image generators for exactly that same thing, where it's like, I mean, it's in some sense it's a replacement to what we used to do in Google, except for not video, because video wasn't that easily to find. For a long time we could do images. I remember the first time that I saw some really good generative art that was bizarre. It was like a panda riding a unicorn kind of situation or something. And there's like 50 of them. And it just made me remember like some of the earliest jobs where I was texturing 3D stuff and I needed trees, and I just went to Google and searched for trees, and I got zillions of trees, and previously I had a digital camera and I had to go take pictures of that, when Google added the image search. So even the very first time I used it for generative, I thought, well, this is just like that, except for so much faster and better. But the video is interesting because there's really not an equivalent in you can get stock footage video, but but it's kind of hit or miss, and continuity is like impossible to get correct in that
Correct,
case.
and especially if you're storyboarding, it's okay if you don't have like the same character.
Right, you're communicating to your team only, yeah.
But it's pictorial, it's video, it's location sensitive. There's lighting in it. There's some there's depth of field. It's basically closer to the vision than ever before. Than beyond sketches. Sketches are great.
Yeah.
And they do give a personality and a flow for narrative. But and we are doing the same on the music side. So we are sketching lots and lots and lots of songs, in addition to the songwriters and producers that we have with us to come up with ideation options.
Wow. Okay.
More tools. I love this topic. I'll maybe go through an example workflow using tools that I know students generally have access to. So maybe we start with text-based tools. I make videos now for a living. This started as a side hustle, working as a brand strategist pre-pandemic. I got an email when I was starting to do YouTube videos about branding from a company called Synthesia, which is an AI avatar tool. They said, Phil, we like your videos. Can you make a video using our custom avatar tool? So we made a synthetic Phil. That video performed well. And I've now spent years creating and trying AI tools for a living. That has become my primary job, and I've reduced my client projects from 2023 to 2024 by 50% and made it up in brand deals, which are almost entirely AI tools. So I like this question. So ChatGPT is obviously one that pops up often. I described earlier on a different panel how I think I get excited about AI in the way that it makes you better at your work instead of it being a shortcut or the lazy way of doing things. I record all of my calls with my clients, and I'm working with them, let's say 3, 4, 5 months. Now, which I couldn't do before, I can go back, I can upload that transcript into the files section of a project on ChatGPT and say, hey, remember that conversation we had that first week, we started working together? What was that story? Compare that against the about page copy we've written for your website and give me ideas on how to make this better. Like, I couldn't process that data prior to this. And the best part is now I can sit on those calls and just be present. I'm not taking notes. AI is doing that for me. I'm not trying to process the information. I'm trying to extract it from my client, and I get to just focus on being present. So it's made me enjoy my work more. I think we're now crossing from this territory, or YouTube scripts are another one. So when I go, I create a lot of video content, and I don't have a huge team. It's me doing the majority of it, other than the edit. I will do it in 3 steps. Step 1, here's the brief from the brand. Step 2, copy and paste without any rhyme or reason the homepage copy from the brand. I'm assuming the brand has done more work than I'm going to figure out the positioning, be strongly inspired by the way that they've presented the brand. And then step 3, here are 3 previous recent examples of YouTube video scripts. Put that all together, and it gets the script 98% correct. Because I've also used the instructions in ChatGPT to say, here's what it means to sound like Phil Pallen. Here's what he says. Here's what he doesn't say. Avoid words like unlock, unleash, delve, treasure trove, game-changing, all those like cliche terms. That's how I use text-based AI to become incredibly efficient. And to talk numbers, I track my time with everything that I do. I'm tracking my time right now. There are projects where I have more than doubled my hourly rate as a result of using AI.
So yeah, I want to keep it going, but how this ChatGPT just regular web interface with one of the paid versions, right? You're talking about on Windows or...
Good question.
Yeah,
Because
I'm just a little curious
Yeah.
about the specifics
too.
of that. Yeah.
there are, so I actually started on a pro account, but I use it reluctantly because OpenAI will train the model on the information that you
Yeah.
provide in a pro account. So you need to be extremely careful.
Yeah, we'll have questions about what we'll talk about the back.
When in doubt, don't do it. Nothing confidential. No phone numbers, no email addresses of your clients should not go in there. Instead, use a tool, use Adobe Acrobat, which you're probably already using to open PDFs. The little AI assistant button in the top corner will give you the same, if not better, functionality and not train any kind of model on the data that you're providing. So I typically use a Teams account, which is the entry point with ChatGPT that doesn't train the model on your data, which is hugely important. We're kind of in this like novel stage of AI. Ooh, look what it can do. But now hopefully we're segueing into this considers privacy. This considers, it's like less sexy, but it's like really important. And then image generation, I was just going to say, I use obviously Adobe Firefly. DALL-E and Midjourney are exciting, but in my world, I can't have my clients getting sued for the images that they're creating. So we use Adobe Firefly because it is a commercially safe option to create imagery that's not going to get you in trouble. So you're going to type, Spider-Man. It's not going to know what you're talking about, but it's designed that way on purpose. And so teaching, it's just a really exciting time because now my clients, not only can I hand them a brand that they can use and say, here are the rules, here's what it means to stay on brand, but now with image-based generation, they can actually be creative. And it's just an exciting time because I see how excited they are to be empowered to actually create and be creative. And they didn't have that before.
I think I'm going to have the interesting perspective on this panel as the technical guy. So I'll start with the easy one. On the consumer side, I've been able to use AI and the large language models to kind of help categorize my financial transactions and make my financial accounting a lot easier on the business end and how I organize everything. So when it comes to tax time, makes things really easy.
Wait, what are you using though? What is that?
Something I've built myself.
Oh.
LLM. That's what I said on the
Okay.
technical side. I'm probably not using an open source tool. Most
Okay.
of the stuff we're doing. So over at Proforma, again, we can't put anything into an OpenAI tool or a DeepSeek because they use that information to train their models. So we have an internal AI team that's building our own language models that we use for certain things. So, the easiest use case is, a chat bot, just like a ChatGPT, where you ask it a question and it gives you a result. We've built a custom model that's specific to our technology platform that gives you a result on how to use our technology platform. And we're building some other models with all of the data we have in our system that allows our customers to do some really cool stuff more efficiently, just like you'd use a tool like ChatGPT out in the open. The other way I use it technically day to day is I run a local AI LLM on my machine, and I can ask it questions that way because it's not calling home, it's not being trained anywhere else. So I have to have the technical knowledge of how to install that and run it without crashing my computer.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to interject just for a moment because we might need to define a couple things that we've been talking about that not everybody would know, and maybe certainly like it could be anyone online. So we're saying LLM over and over again, which is a acronym for large language model. This is like part of the one of the names of the technology behind these generative AIs. So AIs that take some sort of input and then output something larger like an image or video or in the case of ChatGPT, a text, but which keeps kind of going. It's kind of interesting because the conversation is a little bit different. So that's where that acronym's going in there. It's not super important, but the thing that's important to note is that they're created or trained by large companies typically. That's like ChatGPT is trained by OpenAI, and they're maintaining it on their end, right? And so one of the issues, and we'll delve more into the ethics and the kind of business side of this that was brought up is like, well, when you use this, you're giving it your data typically, which when you're a student should probably never be a concern. Like you totally need to do that, like get into it and do it as much as possible. But if you're working in a company that has an NDA on some kind of IP on a movie that's coming out or this kind of thing, you can't just do that. You can't just use these tools because the stuff is like potentially leaking out, right? So that's one of the issues with this thing, the LLMs. But then what was alluded to here, we didn't get to, is that you can run them internally as well. So it is possible now. I mean, technically it was forever, but it's ever more possible and going to get even more possible to basically make it run inside your system where you're not sharing any. And you can see now that you're like, okay, so now this technology is affected directly by kind of like my business model, you know, and there's the training of it, but then the leaking of the data. So I just want to kind of give a little bit more space to that.
We actually do use an internal one for our wiki, so you can ask our wiki questions. So
you can ask them anything and not worry that it's...
So we put our company data in there, and then we have a little chat bot that you can ask it, like, how does this work, or what's my, you know, HR, anything that the company has is documented.
Yeah, like anything, you know, it's like people could talk about the pros and cons of, you know, running your own LLM or using one in the cloud, but the future is going to be a hybrid system where that's happening in all of the right places the way it should be, and probably with just a matter of saying, I want it this way, you know, like at some point. So, okay, let's get the next question. And we kind of alluded to this a little bit and touched on it here. But let's go ahead and crack this open. So what would be some ethical concerns for students that they should be aware of when using AI-generated content? So specifically, we're talking about AI-generated content right now for students.
I mean, unintentional plagiarism
Yes.
is probably the greatest concern as a student. It can happen that you plagiarize even when you don't intend to, just based on the way that these models are designed, the way that they source information. I find that I am really proactive in making sure if you're using a tool like ChatGPT, in fact, Gemini is probably better for this function. In fact, it's designed by Google and is built on citations, but you really need to tell the AI, connect to the internet, find 3 recent sources to back up the claims. The risk of hallucination is still very real.
Okay, so define that real quick.
Yeah, well, hallucination, the representation of misinformation as fact is maybe how I would describe it in a sentence. So you're reading something that looks and feels real, but it isn't. And, you know, I'm a critic of ChatGPT. I think it's not designed well when it comes to citations and backing up data. Using other tools. I mentioned Gemini. I mentioned AI Assistant. Every single fact that is claimed has a citation. Every single fact. And you can click it and it will take you to the specific spot in the document where that is taken from. And so it's just something to think about.
And that's got to be, so I did not know that, but I'm thinking like what a mess it was to make that model. To have to maintain all that backlinking in their data that's kind of amazing. But
yeah, in that specific instance, it's based on the information you provided. So up to 600 pages, I think it is at this particular time. You've also got speed. So what I'm always impressed is it generates it really quickly, but I love knowing that I can click and double check the citation. So maybe that's you want to avoid unintentional plagiarism. It's now easier than ever to accidentally plagiarize something, and really give some consideration to the tools you're using and what their ethics are. There's an organization called the Content Authenticity Initiative. It's an organization that many, a couple thousands of organizations now are a part of and are committed to transparency in the use of AI. If you ask me what I think is scariest, I think deep fakes are really scary. AI is nerve-wracking as it is exciting, but I think as it moves forward, it also needs to be regulated and policed, and transparency in its use I think is hugely important. So knowing the tools you're using, making sure that you can trust them, and keeping an eye on some of these organizations that are designed to help us not enter a very scary phase of technology.
All right, anyone else? Yeah.
I think on the the development side or the coding side, if you're using these tools like Copilot or things to help you generate code, the interesting thing is each developer has their own unique style when you're writing code. So you're taking a little bit of your uniqueness and individuality out of the code you write when you're using these tools, while they're also trained on already pre-existing data that may not be accurate. And as a student, we're just kind of trying to solve the solution to submit the assignment to get a good grade from the professor. So sometimes that's the fast way to get the result without actually understanding what it's outputting. And usually what I like to say is, okay, great, maybe it generates the right answer for you, but go back and see if you can recreate that a different way so you truly understand what's going on.
Okay. How about this one? Is there anything from like the latest AI headlines that you want to debunk, or that's like a common myth of AI that people have now? So one of the things that's happening is, you know, in any tech sphere, there's fear, uncertainty, and doubt, we used to say about new technologies. But AI, like many over the past few years, have been grabbed by the mainstream zeitgeist and make it into something completely different. And there are plenty of people making commentary about it that clearly don't use AI ever. Right? This is so happening. So, yeah, what can we debunk up here for these guys?
I think a big one that we see a lot is AI's taken over the world, I'm not going to have a job. And Phil alluded to it a little bit with hallucinations. If you've ever actually used any of these tools, they're really terrible, and what they're outputting still needs to be checked by a human anyway. So maybe the specific role that you have today may go away, but there's going to be new roles that you have. I know Culley touched on it earlier about his programmer that, you know, it used to take him a week to do something. Well, now it only takes him a day, so now he's got, you know, 4 or 5 more days in his calendar week that he can do other things with and enable and produce more. So that's definitely one of the things for me.
I think from our side, that especially for those going to school, I think it's very important to keep your foundation and your awareness very high, and you use that as a differentiator for everything else that you can be replaced by. So from our lens, the projects that we do are like philosophy for profit. So there's always a component of that we are going to be using these tools. Some jobs are definitely going to go away, but we are here to create new jobs within the entertainment business. So that's a commitment that we've taken as a company, that yeah, some things will definitely change and we cannot help it. So you have to be part of the change. So we've embraced that. But like we were speaking at one of the earlier panels, when you are at school, so to learn to become a tastemaker of your craft, I think that's a very valuable tool, and that will separate you from any generic machine language program software out there. You know, because at the end, the qualifier, like you say, citations, even if that they have to be validated, you have to understand what are the kind of citations. There are 4 types of citations. Which are the schools of citation? How do you validate that? Now, if you haven't learned that, you're always going to be in a hit and miss, and you cannot be entrusted by any organization or any person to go and do any kind of work that has some citations associated with it. So similarly, like whether it's music, whether it's screenwriting, I think so your taste making, your ability to understand cinema, language, there's so much subtext, content, culture, that those many nuances coming into common play today, not yet. But that's what is going to separate you out, you know, from those core skill set, which are more philosophical, ethical, moral, you know, which I think can differentiate you when you are at school to take time to understand. It's like somebody who's going into an English major. They understand the nuances, flavoring of languages. Somebody then who's just learning English to get by, who's an immigrant. You know, so somebody so let's say on the extreme side is a true tastemaker, a connoisseur of the language, can really be an advisor, can really do something with it that the other person cannot. So I think you should strategically prepare yourself to be that tastemaker of your industry, because that's what I think it will come down to, because everything else will be replaceable too fast.
Well, so far I've found that clients think it's directable, and it does not, at least in imagery and video.
Again, this would be people who are not using it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, even myself, I know this, but I try. We recently have a shot that we need to have crows, and the crows need to fly in a circle. And it made crows, but it made them fly this way and then in and out and in and out. And no matter what I tried to tell it, it just wouldn't have crows flying in a circle, in a certain angle. So it does create great images, but it really doesn't listen to you very well. It takes a lot of work, or it never even works. And then consistency. They're getting better, and video to video maybe be more consistent, but yeah, that's two of the biggest ones: directability and consistency right now. But it is getting better and better. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, right? Because you're using video, so you must be doing some level of this. It sounds. I've been kind of one of the people that's kind of like off-putting about the concept of being a prompt engineer, because I feel like there was this. It's like one of the buzzwords that kind of stuck around for the last year, but it really is the kind of thing where you're like, that's not going to be a thing eventually. But it never works out that simply. It's like, no, actually, in some spheres that'll stay because AI is just getting as wider as it is getting deeper. But I imagine if your input system became more like. You need to have the back end to be sophisticated enough, but the issue now becomes like, well, what's the way that you want to explain it to do this circle? Do you need to be mathematical about it, or can you use the language of your domain, which would be a planular circle at this space? Like it's
Maybe I can even sketch it.
Yeah. It seems like it's an input problem at that point.
And I think this will be the year of video for sure, because it's been obviously slower than image. For image, I've played around with style reference, which allows you to inform the AI on colors and styles, textures, those things, and then composition or structure reference, which could be as simple as Culley taking out a Sharpie and a white piece of paper and just actually drawing the location of those crows where you want them in the frame. You can just take a picture of it, inform that. It could be a stick man, it could be a circle. That's giving the AI a little more direction, but it certainly still is far from perfect. Better for images right now. Video, not quite there, but certainly I think even between now when we have this conversation to 6 months from now, it's evolving so quickly. This thing you mentioned of prompt engineering, I think it's nonsense. There's a job for it, but it doesn't mean that all of us need to learn how to become prompt engineers by tomorrow. Every single day, AI models are learning how to communicate conversationally, and that's what's really exciting. When we open Google, we have to have a question formulated to get a good answer. Now we can open a generative AI tool and say, hey, I need your help with this task. It doesn't even have to be a question. And then my favorite prompt is, don't take action yet. I'm not done telling you what I need you for. And I do it in stages. Don't take action yet. So what's cool is that we get to have a conversation like we are right now. And I think that's more conducive to how humans communicate. But I'm adamantly against the idea that there's a perfect way to write a prompt. It's like me saying, you need to speak English to me in the way that I tell you to speak it. No, what makes it interesting is your human experience. Taste, you said, which I think is something that AI will never have. It never will. It never will. Taste is something human. Storytelling, context, human lived experience. These are your competitive advantages. So if you're worried about losing your job, self-reflect and go, what are those things that make me human? And how do I lean into those human things that will, if anything, become more in demand as AI is literally all around us? So you can tell I'm passionate about this.
Well, and some, I'm hearing a little disagreement over here. No, you don't. Oh, okay. Oh, you were. Okay.
I heard. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, example of what? I just said a lot. What do you want an example of? Where was it?
Like the human, you were saying, what's the
human factor?
Sure.
Human factor, yeah.
I'll give an example from my own industry. I own a branding agency, and there's fear among graphic designers, right, that they're going to lose their jobs. I can't speak for everyone. I approach this topic with absolute humility. I don't pretend to be an expert. I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years and just sharing what I've learned. But if anything, AI doesn't come close to the logos and the brand identities that I can design over the course of 4 months through extensive conversations. It's not just a logo. Typically, it's like a business container and system that fits with a strategy that's going to help my client fit their or achieve their business goals. AI can't do that. And so if anything, it's underscoring the need that the human plays in the role of that process. And my business, it's increased the demand for human involvement. I think when a client hires me, they don't hire me just purely based on skill. They hire me for my attention, my opinion, access. And so these are things that I would just encourage to think about because those are the things that AI cannot replace. AI can compute a lot of information very quickly. And we need it to do that because it frees up the human time and headspace to be creative, to iterate, to try things, to conceptualize. I think there was a study a few years ago, Goldman Sachs, 63% of jobs would be complemented by AI, 30 would be unaffected, and I think it's not good at math, I think there's 7 left. 7% would be replaced by AI. And whether it's AI or another technology, I think simply based on how fast AI can compute information, probably 7% of the jobs should be replaced. Controversial, but
yeah. On the music side, if you have the generative AI, engines create music in a particular way, you'll see. And if you especially use names, let's say, make me a song like Michael Jackson or Nile Rodgers, it's stopping to do that because they're already being plugged down, and so you cannot, and that's going to go away. So unless you have the skill sets to differentiate between that, oh, Michael's music sounds like this and Niall's music sounds like this, the 70s were like this, the 80s were like this, the 90s and the 2000s, it's again your taste making, your ability to even understand or differentiate, even if you're not an expert, but to differentiate that is what's going to keep you more relevant than somebody else or a system that takes that decision for you. So that's what the hardcore fundamentals of your discipline, I think, will stand in very good ground more than ever before. So I think one should not fast forward that chapter, and you should embrace it and go back to the basics. That will be the biggest differentiator, and I think otherwise you will be replaceable very fast.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Really got me thinking. Like there's this theme of like we're gonna have to triage our AI. It's like the user of an AI has got to triage all this out of it. But this idea that things that we think of as milestones or points, like a Michael Jackson sound, we may not be able to use that as our input at some point. So we will have to.
It'll be flagged as infringement already.
Right.
So
right.
some of those generative AIs, if you try it now, when I tried it 6 months ago, it was there. You tried it last week, it's not there. So those things, those dynamics between the rights owners and the technologists, that communication is in process, and I think it'll keep being in progress.
Yeah. So this is a very dynamic space here.
Yes.
We're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some of those things are going already. But some new things will come in, and but definitely systems are moving so fast that by the time we get out of this little conversation here, things have already changed. So what's relevant now is not relevant 5 minutes from now.
That's the AI anxiety. Every day I wake up to a phone full of new information and new language models and new ways to use it. It's so. How do you not get anxiety from that? Like, I feel like I'm falling behind every second.
I do.
Yeah,
I do, but I also just choose a lane. I'm not an expert in chip technology. I don't write code. I try AI tools and review them and make videos out of them and can make recommendations based on my own experience, workflows, tools, things it does well and things that it doesn't do well. But I am approaching this topic with complete humility. I can get on this stage and talk about personal branding for a day straight. But even the topic of AI, it's uncomfortable to talk about. I'm an optimist at heart, so I focus on the positives, but there are some scary things with it and some anxiety-inducing components of it.
Well, some of the anxiety-inducing is like, what's the next guy know that I don't know? Maybe they're using it in a way that I'm not, that's expanding their abilities. So then you have that anxiety of, am I falling behind? I'm saying, this is me. I do this like a lot. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine being in this world right now with this AI, with all these AI technologies. It's really hard to keep up. So
The silver lining is that it's
Phil
like,
finds a way to specify what he needs for the purposes. So
Yeah.
I think it's maybe you have to make it small.
I also like that I can learn from other people. So I think it's really important to approach this from a learning standpoint. Like, we're all trying to figure it out. I'll learn something from you. I'll learn something from you. I'll learn something from you that I didn't know from my own experience. So I always find the silver lining. It's a really exciting space to like learn new things and get excited about, whether it's efficiencies and productivity or ways of maximizing your time or ways of doing your work in less minutes. So you have more time to like, turn on airplane mode or go outside and have a walk. Like that's what I get excited about, is like using it to win back time, to do the things you love to do.
I think that's really important. And I remember seeing a Bill Gates interview many, many years back. And he said that he hires the laziest guy because the laziest people find the shortest distance between 2 points. Okay, so something to think about, where you can get time for everything else. And so
don't try that on your interview. Don't say that you're the laziest guy. I might, but
Yeah, but to pick up from where the conversation that's happening, I think we definitely look at it as excitement. To definitely embrace it. There's lots to learn from it. You got lots to watch out. But I think every day that I think about it, I just think that how much more powerful today. So think if you're like a music production student, okay? But somebody who's learned 8-10 years of piano have their ears more seasoned than somebody who's just getting into music production, the technical part. Okay, that's what I'm talking about, the depth of understanding of your subject. And then maybe you're just, your depth of understanding is in classical. It's not in pop. Pop is a whole idiom in itself. So how do you prepare yourself? So I think going back to music history, the really social soft skills of education, I think will be a big differentiator from anything that is technology related. Because technology needs that information to be fed in to learn. And only the masters, and that's why all this copyright infringement and the battles are going on right now between the technology firms and the copyright holders is even in the literary world, for information being taken out from the Wall Street Journal and all the science journals and things which are copyrighted, some of which are in public domain. Now it's a continuum. It's not an overnight process that's going to, but everybody is learning from everyone, but the people who have the depth of knowledge from their discipline will definitely stand out. And again, I think being hyper-focused will make you be better positioned tomorrow than trying to be a very big generalist. And that's my take on things.
So I want to go back to the anxiety for a second. So lots of people can have anxiety for lots of reasons. So that's a catch-all statement, kind of like, why that's happening. But in this context, one of the best things you can do is to become part of a community that is using the tools, doing something that's like you want. And typically right now, that's going to be an online community. That's going to be the easiest way to do it. But if you're in constant contact with other humans that are using the AI, and you're having exchanges, that should help alleviate some anxiety. Just in general, if you're in contact with other humans, it's an anxiety-reducing thing. But if you're thinking in your space like, oh, I haven't messed with tools, and there's so many when I go search, and there's another way to do that. You could probably go, let me try to find a group of students that are doing this kind of degree that are interested somewhere. I can't give you guys specifics on that, so that might be something we can look at later. But community is really the thing that's going to help.
There's a lot of Reddit groups that I follow, so look for AI groups in Reddit.
So I can say one thing, that I'm a big Star Trek guy. So I was infiltrated when I was much younger, and I watched as many Star Trek episodes as I could, but it was also a philosophical exercise. So for me, it was the next steps from, I don't know if many of you have heard of like Aesop's fables, that there was a little moral takeaway from this little story at the end of every story. For me, Star Trek was like that. And I think that I took off from something that you said. I really believe that we are the ultimate virtual reality AI generated, and I don't call it AI, I call it the common generated beings. Okay? And so this is the philosophical side. So we are the ultimate creation of that, but the processing, fast processing is what is the tools that is given to us. So it's going to only depend on how smart we are, how we use these tools to come to either replace us to become the new us. Because once that thing, like in so many sci-fi movies that we've seen, they can completely replace like human beings. And come on, Matrix, the movie, it happened when in the early 90s, right? Long back, were visual personified stories of old spiritual stories, right? It's already happened. So we are just the next manifestation of the same thing. So, and I mean, from the Star Trek episodes which show that, I don't know if many of you have seen, there's a doctor in one of the Voyager series that the doctor is a positron. He's a holographic image, but he is a doctor. He can perform every duty as a doctor, but he's also a leadership officer, because everyone who makes it to the bridge of the Enterprise has to be qualified as a leadership officer. And this guy is a hologram. And then he's abducted in this episode by other holograms. And they want to make their own species and have their own planet. And they exist without any biological air, oxygen. They don't need any of that. They want a whole different existence. So when I think about, we are talking about AI, I'm like, learn it fast, get over this thing. There will be people who will be talking about policy. God bless them. Embrace the technology, learn fast, get your fundamentals, get going in life, and it'll be time to go before you know it. So speed it up.
All right, we're going to switch gears to do some questions, and I think they're going to put up mics. Yeah, and while some people are making their way to, there's a mic over there and a mic over there. If you guys have questions, I'm going to field one from the online group that's been sitting here, which is kind of interesting. So I'm going to read it exactly as they wrote it. It said, is there a fear that AI could blunt the creative flow, they put flow in quote, so maybe flow process, by automating the creative process and turn us into output-centric machines instead of thinking machines? So they're kind of digging for like, a potential negative here. So maybe you could throw a wider net. If you're even as you're doing it right now, maybe you're thinking, oh yeah, there's some negative things that will probably change, or maybe I can find. So what do you guys think? Is it only accelerated use? So you're really positive, but it's like no flow breaking, it's going as fast as you can think.
There's one thing I've been reading that right now the AI is learning from a lot of things online, and everything that's scraping is made by other AI. So it's dumbing itself down in a way. It's flattening the creative by itself because it's only reiterating what it's done before. So without the human input, it's going to homogenize itself in a way. So it's just something I read recently that makes sense. The more content that AI creates, the more homogeneous it gets.
And
But
that might make
without
us
the
crave
human
human. So in a way that could be positive, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the interesting thing about that is, to me, every time, like the fact that we discovered that means it's no longer a problem. That's how I see it in the bigger picture, right? Because the fact that it was recognized, it ends up being an interesting talking point, but it means that somebody somewhere is already going, okay, and I know that came from scientific papers actually originally. So they did an analysis of the output, and the variants that were coming from secondary LLMs were producing less quality results in whatever way they were qualifying them. But yeah, of course, then it just becomes a thing where, like stock libraries, you go, well, fine, we have to, if we want to do this for real, we have to spend $100 million to acquire all new information from the real world so that we can train it. I feel like that's kind of part of it. But yeah, the fact that it was acknowledged that it happens, it does mean it's almost like a cheap situation. It's like, well, I got a cheap LLM. It's the one that scrapes. It's a starter LLM. I don't know matter that the data's that good, but
something is just like us. Inside us is the devil, and inside us is the divine, and we are human. We have all those attributes and those possibilities. Wherever your energy goes, right, wherever your thought process goes, that's what's going to get lit up. It's no different with any of these tools. Like people say, oh, social media is bad, Facebook is this, but it's how you use it. It's like any other power that's available to us. It's how you use it. So today, even in the Valley area, there is a high demand than ever before for technologists who also have philosophical backgrounds, because it's like otherwise you're giving a gun in the wrong hands. If you're giving technology in the wrong hands, the same thing is going to happen. So it's just actually, I just see it as an extension, manifestation of us. There are people doing good things in life, and there are people who are not doing good things in life. And we're human beings, and there was no machine involved in that. So the responsibility is ours. So if you're going to program and make these things, unless we put in those kind of, let's say, moral or some ethical, what you call perimeters, within which you have to operate, that's what's going to determine how successful that other side is going to become.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the argument of just malware. Like, there's no Hippocratic oath for being a software developer and getting licensed, right? And there's never going to be now, for sure. Yeah, that's a terribly dark place to go. You're kind of saying, hey, we've been talking about positive uses, but if you deliberately went out of your way to, which I guess like some deep fakes fall into that category now, but and I know you've done cybersecurity, and we didn't talk about this one, so I wanted to bring it up here. So our cybersecurity people have talked to me about all of the people who are using LLMs offline and training them for hacking purposes, so that they're literally using the LLMs to hack as fast as you guys can generate content that you want. They can. I mean, essentially, you have to have an LLM on the other side blocking the hacking, because it's beyond the speed of any human that could possibly. And we're talking state actors, but we're also talking just individuals that have the money to do this. And then the worst thing I was saying earlier is that eventually LLMs will run on all of our devices. So now it's like, that you were mentioning regulation, but I feel like the cat is so out of the bag, because wherever you regulate it, they're just not going to regulate it somewhere else. And
regulation comes in too late anyway.
Yeah.
A regulation is like, that's why I'm more like, live life, get on with it, learn fast, next chapter. And then because regulation will come in too late. But yeah, I mean, questions.
Okay. I believe they were first.
Which one?
I believe they were first.
Okay. Okay. All right. So tell us what your name and what program you're in, and then your question briefly.
My name is Yui, and I'm a creative writer. And my question relates to me being like a trans woman, because a lot of minorities, especially like trans people and just queer people in general, struggle to get our stories like heard and like seen. And a fear I have is like AI being able to scrape a lot of these things and remove like our humanity from it and put it on the screen, because like companies like Disney are already kind of doing that. Even without like AI, they're just taking like our stories and ideas and just removing us from it. And I'm wondering if there's ways we can like fight back with that, or even use it to help against this, like AI in general. I think it's a great time actually to voice and express exactly how you are, and if you stay independent and find like other like-minded, because there are lots, who want to do and express, and you have the tools today to do that. So while they do what they do, you have an opportunity to create something, and if it really matters that much to you, then it's your job to get others together to make this movement more successful, and then wait for somebody somewhere sometime will make this happen for you. So if it really matters to you, then that actually becomes part of your crusade. It's part of the journey of your life, is how I would look at it. Right. Thank you.
And you have all the tools today to go out unfiltered, to express exactly how you are without anybody doing anything.
Yeah, certainly no better time ever.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I think gets lost a lot when you're in college and working hard and stuff. And sometimes it doesn't seem like that, but it really is. Like, this is easily the freest time that you could have ever lived on the planet. So don't let it get you down if you think that's not the case. It doesn't mean it can't improve, but sometimes people get you thinking we're on this other trajectory, and it's nearly impossible when you look at the objective measures of the direction of humankind for that to be true.
I don't even, I want to take it kind of, big media has been stealing everybody's stories since time began. So I don't know if you feel singled out, but don't. Every media steals everything. So if you have a story that's literally been stolen, like, copyright it. But that's just the way the world is. One person hears it, a telephone, and a new piece of media comes out. So I wouldn't feel targeted. It's just, it happens to everybody.
There's a kick-ass book which my daughter gave me to read. It's called, I think, Free Culture, that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's a must read. And it speaks about exactly what Culley just spoke about. Yeah? So it's up to you, and it's only up to you to go ahead and make this successful. And then, like is being discussed, there's no better time than now.
I mean, literally, the Matrix is the story of Jesus. It's just retold in a new way. So things have been rehashed and stolen and redone since the Bible. So just keep creating.
Yeah, another good way to think about this is that all of this technology in every way is constantly becoming more democratized, no matter how it seems like that's not the case. Like, certainly it's portrayed that way, and there's plenty of people who want to show you that that's not the case because fear-mongering is so profitable. But when it comes to actual technology, like this idea of AI, or like AI being somehow controlled, it's, or like the Skynet, we mentioned Skynet earlier, like, to me it's like almost hilarious because the number of AI systems that will be really usable and functional, the instances of them is growing exponentially constantly. So it's like impossible for anyone to take control of it. Like, it's literally this just growing firestorm that you can grab your hands on. Like, it's amazing. And we've been talking about like known AIs that you have to go to a web server and you're using those systems, but if you're a little more technically minded right now, you can get all of that running on your laptop, and before you know it, you won't have to be technically minded to do it. So it's changing fast. Okay, what's your name, degree, and question?
Hello, my name is Jacob Gino. I am a simulation and visualizations major. I wanted to ask, with the rise of LLM and generative AI, do you believe that computer learned wisdom is possible? And what moral implications does that spawn?
For me, I saw all of that in Star Trek again. The next generation had like a commander called Data, who's an android, right? And he was actually the generation 2. The first generation that came out was very corrupt. So apparently its founder, Dr. Noonien Song, somebody, put an end to that guy and made this second version without a particular emotion chip so that he could just perform as he was supposed to be originally conceived and not given the variables of emotion and that kind of learning and coloration. I think everything is possible. If you can think it, it will happen today, tomorrow, or day after. It seems to be a law of the universe, and I am convinced. So if you can think it, good, bad, or ugly, it will happen. It just depends on how much time you're going to spend doing it.
Yeah.
It will happen, either by you or by somebody else.
We're
It's
just
inevitable.
one big organic computer based on data. And there's a base set of data you're born with, and then you grow from there. So it's literally like your OS when you're born, and then you learn from repetition and pattern recognition. That's what our brains do. They're pattern recognizers. And it just, extrapolates from there, and you become who you are. I believe it's going to happen.
I would frame it in that if you could ask me a few questions that you, depending on the answers, might think I'm wise, you should try asking those of ChatGPT, because I bet you would find a lot of wisdom in there already. You'd be quite surprised, I think. I think there's a number of times where I've gone off and just had conversations and thought, yeah, this was so much better than having to read a book about this topic, because you knew, like, you've already been talking to me, so you knew exactly how to say it back to me. I mean, like non-technical things, like it's going to be quite a journey.
Yeah, and AI, I mean, when you say it like that, when you go to these kind of like ChatGPT or wherever, I think of it more as common knowledge, common information, not like artificial intelligence. It's common intelligence, actually, that is being put into all of that, which has the capability already of learning in its infancy, to give us these kind of options and suggestions and other things. And it'll evolve. It'll evolve by the time we get out of this room. It's that fast.
All right, we are almost out of time. We'll take one. We're actually out of time, but we'll take one more question. We'll take two more questions.
Hi, my name is Dee Dee. I'm an alumni graduate from the film program. My question is more about how presenting AI as not only as an employer or an employee on a resume. So I work with a lot of brands currently, and the problem is a lot of them are traditional. So I'm trying to figure out a way of integrating AI and putting on my resume like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to grow within that brand. I don't know how to present it.
We have a brand person.
That brand person.
It's a common, I've heard this challenge a lot. I think even for me in the small business world, I have the advantage where I have a little bit more control and flexibility over what I use and try and learn. There's a lot of frustration in corporate or enterprise level where we've got this great technology, but there's so many hoops that you have to go through before you can actually use it and implement it. I had a great mentoring session earlier that I keep coming back to. And we just independent of technology, we just talked about, and I think about prompt engineering. It's kind of silly. What this really is identifying and articulating a challenge and then providing a solution to that challenge, which is something I've been talking about way pre-AI, coming back onto campus, right on this stage. Putting myself in your shoes, which is, how do I get a job when I graduate this place? How can that job be fulfilling? Identify a challenge and outline a solution, the how, the why. And if AI can fit into that, it might be a compelling, you might be able to make a compelling case. But I think so much of this, AI or not AI, is just problem or challenge, I prefer the term, challenge formulation. And so much of business is that. We could all tell you stories on another panel about, the challenges we've identified in our businesses and the solutions that we've come up with to tackle that. So I would even think about that independent of AI. Maybe AI plays a role in the solution, and it's up to you to kind of present that in a compelling way, depending on the company that you're working with or the brand. There are a lot of hoops that can be very expensive to implement this technology because there's so many hoops to jump through. But I would just bring it back to the basics. I often do in kind of business and branding.
I mean, I would say if you're applying to a company and AI tools scares them away, you shouldn't apply to that company. Yeah. I mean, I would say you've got an extreme group up here, but I definitely would be like, boy, that's kind of frightening because they're definitely, I can't imagine what company is absolutely not going to be affected. So, all right, last one.
Hello, my name is Isabella. I'm a computer animation major. My question was, are LLMs more consistently accurate and less scary for artistic careers than larger generative AIs like ChatGPT, since they have more citations and a smaller pool of data?
I think on ChatGPT, I've started seeing citations are coming up more and more frequently now. They're getting stronger and stronger because they're actually hiring philosophers. They're hiring people who are specialists and they understand that better. So it is changing, but yeah, I mean, somebody else can pitch it.
Your results may vary. It's a very hard question to answer. Is the AI correct? You have to check for yourself. And which one's more correct? Again, citations help, but you kind of have to do that research. I don't know if you guys have done that much, but I find with ChatGPT, I use it a lot to help me work with my software, and a lot of the time it extrapolates totally wrong. So I have to double check it with actual Google searches instead and cross-check. But it does help me get in the world, and then I have to make it more accurate myself.
Are you talking about generating an image that maybe has some artist's work mixed into it, and you're worried about that kind of situation? Or what? Can you give us an example?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me think. which would be better for me to use in my artistic career, like an LLM that was like made and developed by my company, or something more general like ChatGPT?
I think that depends on your use case. An LLM made by you would be made by your content, so it's going to only spit out something that it can interpret from your content. Now, if you want to go wider and scrape other people's content, it depends what you're trying to do. You know, it depends on the results you're looking for and the question you're trying to ask. I know that.
Yeah, and I would say as a student, you should play with every tool you possibly can, because what you're generating is probably going to be throwaway, because it's your experience of how to interact with the tool that's really the value. So I wouldn't let that scare you. But if you are trying to do something that's like a contract, yeah, you would have to negotiate that with whoever's the consumer of your product that you're producing. The other thing to remember is, like, when you guys make your videos, you guys are the consumer of most of that, right?
No.
At some point, it's not.
Yes, but like, so correct. So when it's only for internal use, but once it starts going out, and if you use anything that is generated by any of these platforms, the authenticity or whether you're infringed on something copyrightable or not is too risky at this stage to determine that. So if you're going out into and making a presentation, suppose you're an agency and you're presenting it to a client, there's no way. You have to cover your ass. Legal is going to shut that chapter down. Just for safety, even if maybe there's no infringement. But just the fact that the tool has been used for it, it cannot be trusted yet.
Thank you.
All right. We took it way over, but all right, you guys. How about a round of applause for our awesome panel here? All right, thank you guys for coming out. Go have some dinner. Don't worry about AI for a little while. But definitely go play with some tools, for sure.